Yeah, let's sit. I'm tired.
There is no requirement.
Okay, that's good to hear. First off, when are you going to open the tap for the water down here? That's what I want to know.
So I didn't think you were gonna open with that.
Sorry. Sorry, I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm just having a little fun. So Yolanda, come on up here too, because there's bound to be questions and things that are going to come up that you can answer as well. Phil? Yes. We just, for those of you who don't know, the few that don't know, we lost our home in the Woolsey fire 6 years ago. Still have not rebuilt. It's a daunting task to go through. There are layers and layers of bureaucracy. We had to go through debris removal, and I learned a hell of a lot about how skipjacks work, and watching all the infrastructure that was damaged and how you think, oh, you just got to move this and you're good. Well, no, if you move that, then it destroys that, and then it uncovers this and all the problems that go just with debris removal. On top of that, there are layers of, as Gary well knows, insurance crap you got to go through. We went through 2 lawsuits. We sued State Farm successfully, ultimately, and Southern California Edison. Well, that takes time, especially during COVID. So it took us forever to even get in front of the city to be able to get to work on this. And I have to tell you, I kept hearing about this mythical creature named Yolanda Bundy from other people saying, oh, she's great, she's great. She's the one that can help you through everything. And my wife, who's gone in and out of PTSD after the fire, we finally met with her just a few months ago, and Yolanda just looked into her eyes, and my wife goes, oh, and everything was great. It was amazing. I was hoping you could spend a lot more time over at our house, come over to hang out. So Yolanda is a font of information about the cities, the rebuild, what we have to go through with that. And so these two have been working, I would say, hand in glove since these fires. So, okay, I'm going to start with, and Halen's here too, not in an official capacity. She just came out to hang out. The question that's on the top of everybody's minds, any update on the highway opening? Does anybody know?
Yeah, so right now with the highway, working with the authorities, Caltrans, and then the 3 different law enforcement agencies that are on the highway in the county, just looking at all the work that has to do with utilities. What I've been hearing is that they're still looking at keeping it a resident-only closure through the end of May, is what they're looking at right now.
Through the end of May.
It's advantageous and that's the sprint that we're on to try to get all the coastal seafront properties complete before then as well, because we're sharing the road with utilities and sedimentation removal.
Let's define residence.
So, as I understand it, I don't know exactly how they do the application process for the placards that you get to come in, but it's those that live within the impact area inside where the checkpoints are, as I understand it.
Inside the checkpoint. So if you need to get from Santa Monica to Point Dume, in my case, you're SOL. Sorry, the military's here. I can use acronyms.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, absolutely not convenient for you. Yes.
Okay. But I've also seen people have managed to get them by hook or crook or connections or luck, or happen to get in front of somebody who didn't know the rules and said, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, and just hand it to you.
Yeah, so the actual control of PCH and the placards and the issuing and the receipt done through the county and the city, the Corps actually plays no role in that. And so, yeah, I'm sure that does occur.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that everybody should come to you and get a favor. But from your perspective, I have not, I'm pretty good at, finding my way through red tape and finding things. But in this case, I refuse to even think about it, because I would feel guilty driving through there. knowing that just that one car is slowing things down a little bit more. If it's a flat out emergency, I'll just drive through the checkpoint, you know. But other than that, there's no reason to do that.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that that is under the placards are under the authority of the sheriff's office. So yeah, it's
Not the highway patrol anymore.
sheriff's office is doing those placards.
Yeah, we had Jen Situ here a couple of weeks ago addressing this, and she's very, very cautious about opening that highway up because her fear is that if she opens it up and it turns out to be a problem, then she's going to close it back down, and that's really going to piss people off.
Yeah, so it's a confounding problem because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on PCH, much debris removal, as everybody has seen. There's also a lot of utility work that continues to be completed along PCH, and then from the past couple of rain events, there's a lot of sedimentation on the road as well. So even with those three main actions going on right now, we have to try to synchronize our efforts. So you'll see, like the Corps right now is very focused on La Costa Beach in that area, just down the road here. But you're not seeing a lot of utility work there right now because we're trying to synchronize this. And so we're going to move from La Costa, and if I have a little bit of time, then we're going to go to Las Tunas, and then that utility work will shift as well to try to manage the space on PCH. The other point is it's not only the cleanup, utility work, sedimentation removal on PCH right now. It's also just about 2 weeks ago, well, about a week ago, we were doing 500 trucks a day. Debris removal out of the impact area, Pacific Palisades, unincorporated in Malibu. That needs to get to about 1,200 trucks a day. And so
1,200 trucks a day.
That's correct. Yeah, and I just say that to be honest and as transparent as possible with folks. If you want this done fast, that's the kind of volume that we're going to need to move. We've just in the past month, an amount of debris, we've basically taken out the weight of an aircraft carrier out of the impact area in just the last month, and that is the beginning stages. That's back when we had 20 crews working. Now we have 60 crews working. So your volume is only going to get more, and so it's a double-edged sword. We want to move this fast, but it will create more congestion and it will create more stress on PCH.
Where, by the way, where does the aircraft carrier worth of dirt end up? Does it go to Steve's house? Where does it go?
So you have different waste streams, and I know a lot of this has been in the news. You do have green waste in the periphery of the property. That's essentially trees that are cut down. Those are chipped and they're returned back to biodisposal areas. So those go to different locations. We do, after the asbestos testing per property, every single property is surveyed and tested for asbestos. If there's an abatement process that goes on, there's a specific facility in Southern California that we take any asbestos materials to. You have concrete that comes out primarily from foundations that's washed on site, that goes through a process that makes it clean concrete, and that re-enters the supply system, also here in Southern California at 2 different facilities. Then you have metal. Almost all the metal is recycled as well. We do that at several different metal recycling facilities in the Los Angeles area. There's a big one in Long Beach, so a lot of your metal's heading that way right now. Concretes and metals we consolidate on Temescal Canyon Road. If you could see a drone right now, none of you would recognize Temescal Canyon Road from PCH past the high school up to Sunset because we're consolidating concrete and metals there. Those go to different locations.
I mean, just on the road right now.
Yeah, we're utilizing. That's it's a wonderful. It turns out Temescal Canyon, once you get south of Bowdoin Road that takes you right into Pali High, there's no cross streets anymore, and you're right in the middle of a canyon. Right. So in terms of noise and also the other environmental mitigations that we have to perform, it's actually an ideal location. It also creates kind of a chute because 80% of your debris is coming out of the Pacific Palisades right now. And so we're able to consolidate those waste streams right there into recyclable materials that re-enter essentially the construction pipeline in Southern California once we're done washing all those materials and then consolidating those materials there. So we're crushing concrete to the effect of 6,000 tons a day of concrete that we're crushing right now. Doing a lot less on metals because metals don't weigh as much, but we bale it right there. So we crush the metals into like essentially these blocks that we then we are able to load up. Now, when you do that, you're actually keeping less trucks off the road because if you transport uncrushed concrete, not surprisingly, you can do the physics in your mind. That takes more space, more trucks. Metals take a lot more space unless you consolidate metals, and we consolidate metals there. So we're keeping hundreds of trucks off the road every day just by doing waste consolidation right there.
That makes sense. I have a quick
Go, Phil.
question. So you said, by the way, thank you, and thank all of you guys for being here. It's really nice. We appreciate you. I hope you realize our gratitude because, I mean, we have some complaints, but that's normal, right? So you mentioned testing. So how much of that do you guys, can you explain the crossover between your testing and then soil testing? Because you don't really officially do soil testing, but you really kind of are doing some soil testing, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a great question. So the asbestos piece is a certified asbestos consultant. They're called CACs, and by the state of California. They're actually a finite resource.
What's the acronym again?
CAC, Certified Asbestos Consultant
Okay.
in the state of California. And California has higher standards than a lot of states, and so that actually is challenging for us to get enough CACs, if you will, on the job site. I mean, we're doing fine, but we need more in Southern California right now. So those are the asbestos consultants that go through and do the testing per location on those sites. And then we do air monitoring in and around the site as well. The authorities that we have through FEMA, to your point, is based on historical database. In the last 7 years in the state of California, there hasn't been soil testing by FEMA during a fire recovery effort. The experience gained from those recoveries over the last 20 years says fires penetrates typically around 3 inches around the fire ash debris, we call it, or the ash perimeter. And so we double that, we take 6 inches, which includes the foundation, which frankly, a lot of foundations here due to earthquake construction are incredibly deep. We find 4-footers daily. So you're talking a lot of concrete that's coming out. And then we leave the site at that point. So any additional soil testing that the state or the county at their discretion can utilize, but the federal government's not going to do additional soil testing as part of this program.
Okay, so to kind of simplify what you just said, you do the soil testing up to 6 inches, and then it's up to us to do the rest.
To be fair and transparent to everyone, there's not an actual test. It's just a complete take. We take 6 inches.
Oh, but you mentioned we test for asbestos. You do a little testing.
Yeah, yeah. Asbestos is a little bit separate case. Yeah, asbestos is a separate case. That is testing, yes.
Okay. And then the other thing that keeps coming up over and over is you must have some insight as to how you do this, is who gets selected? You know, we're all on this big list, and how do you decide what property is next, what street is next, what...
Well, I will tell you that there's always a first person, there's always a last person, right? So and we understand that. But I will tell you the volume that we're hitting right now, I think is going to shock people. So if you look at we're averaging in the last 4 days, Captain Tausch and I look at these numbers every day. Last 4 days, this is how many properties we cleared in today in the totality of the area. 25, 36, I think we dipped down to 27, then we're back up to 37 yesterday. So as long as we average over 30 properties a day, and we're going to easily exceed that, we're going to get to 35 properties a day, probably over 40 properties a day. That gets you 1,000 properties a month. Today, as we woke up, there's 3,800 properties that have been opted in totality. Some of those have been serviced already. 3,800 properties in this entire footprint. So if you're doing over 1,000 a day,
4 months.
4 months, but we're already 500 properties deep into that list already. So, and I think that's the low end of what we can do because we're increasing our capacity right now. And so the world's going to look very different early summer in these areas. Now, I say that when you look at the number of properties that we're able to perform, a lot of those properties that you're able to do in 1 day, maybe 2 days, Pacific Palisades, some of the more complex properties, not surprisingly, are going to be in the Malibu area, so those are going to take a little bit longer. So you're going to have a surge the next 3 months that's going to really reduce the amount of properties that need fire ash or debris removal from this area. But you're still going to have some challenging engineering properties that are going to take us a little bit longer. So when we say originally, hey, this is going to take until January 26th, I really believe when you get to July, the whole world looks different. Mm-hmm. The whole world looks different here. But we're going to have some specific engineering challenges with specific properties, and so we're going to have low density numbers the latter part of the numbers. We're going to get less numbers done per day because those are the more challenging properties. Now, we're not skipping those. I mean, we're up in Rambla Pacifico today on an incredibly challenging property. We're in 2 very challenging properties in Big Rock today. So it's not like we're just doing the easy properties first. We really do them in totality. We're hitting complex properties and standard properties, but we got to hit those numbers. We got to get to 40 properties a day, at least 35 properties a day for the next 3 months. And then it's going to have a very different feeling here in the Palisades Fire impact area.
I love that, and I appreciate it, but I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. Sorry for that reference. How do you select them?
It's an optimization program, essentially. So not that we're taking humans out of the loop, but there's a lot of steps that go in before we get to your property. So if you go to the county website right now, a lot of folks will see their properties green, right? That property's been handed the Corps for execution. Well, behind that property, there's a lot of steps that have to occur. Depending on where you are coastally, we might have to do a biological survey for birds, depending on where your property is at. We're going to have to do that asbestos testing. And if you come up tested hot for asbestos, then we're going to have to do an abatement process, which takes a little bit more time. We have to do a hazard site analysis of your property before we go on that as well. And so
I see you do the asbestos test before you go.
That's correct. Oh yeah, you got to do asbestos before you bring any heavy equipment on the property.
Makes sense.
So you know, depending on where you come across it, or you might have a make-safe operation before we can get even to the asbestos testing. So like say some of the properties that have a lot of overhead hazards, there's metal trusses that are warped and they look like they might fall. Asbestos consultants are on foot initially. They're going on there on foot, and they're going through the property. So it has to be rendered safe first. So you might be a property that needs to be rendered safe. So there's 5 precursors in there that you may have all those 5 precursors that need to occur, and your neighbor doesn't. Your neighbor was clean on asbestos. Your neighbor doesn't have an engineering challenging problem. It has a clean ROE, no legal issues on it, and so they get addressed, and then you don't get addressed until 4 weeks later. It's not because we're trying, maybe you signed up before your neighbor.
Correct.
So it's not necessarily that who signs up first is going to be addressed first.
That's what I'm realizing.
And then there's an optimization issue to it as well. I mean, the program is going to look for a high density of properties because they can get a crew up. We get a crew up in those canyons. We don't really want to pull them out. You want to drop the low boys, leave a crew up there, and then kind of do several properties before you bring a low boy and bring it back out of the canyons. And so it's a compilation of a lot of variables. But like I said, we were 2 weeks ago, we were at 20 crews. Last week, we were at 40 crews. Today, when I woke up, we're at 60 crews. We're going to get up to over 100 crews. So when I talk about 500 trucks just a couple weeks ago, and I want to get to 1,200 trucks, we will get to 1,200 trucks. And we will start addressing a mass volume of folks. And so for folks that have an ROE in and that is green on the county site, we are, a few weeks away from you, not months away from you.
I see. And what predicates getting up to 1,200 trucks? I mean, are you waiting for federal money, or why can't we? No,
we're fine on money. We're fine on money as it stands now.
Never, ever say that, Colonel Sawser.
True. Well, my caveat when you started to talk was as it stands now. So I have a caveat. I slipped that in there. Money's not a constraint at this point. There's a little bit on how you bring your crews aboard. You have to train them properly. I mean, they're all experts in their fields and heavy equipment operators with many years of experience, but you have to bring them along and you got to train them as well. So you just can't instantaneously add 40 crews. You got to make sure that you're bringing crews and training them appropriately.
I see.
We got to register all those crews, and so we have registration sites. I will tell you that from my experience thus far that space is a constraint. If you were to drive all the way down PCH right now, if you have a pass and you start getting into Will Rogers Beach, Gladstones, you're going to see a lot of parked cars. Those aren't tourists. Those are contractors coming to work, and pickups and office trailers and pallets of equipment and then construction equipment. So space is a constraint.
I see.
So I'm in negotiations with a lot of different agencies here in Southern California. I won't run through all of them because I don't know that I'm necessarily going to get some certain ground, but the more flat ground that I can obtain to put equipment and people, that is helpful, but that's a constraint. And then training is a constraint.
One final question from me is, wait, what was the question? Oh, the properties that you see that the debris has been removed by, a private company, What's the difference between that property and what you've done? And be honest.
Well, so the Corps' not in charge of compliance, so I'm not going to make broad sweeping statements about private. I mean, I've seen some private companies out there do excellent work. I would say there's some private companies that I've seen that I
Do
think are somewhat suspect.
I see.
But I'm not the compliance guy.
No.
You know, the prime contractor that we're utilizing this has done this for decades, and we know the standards, and we know the standards well. There's also a series of crews that they line up. I mean, we got the asbestos crews, we got the hazard assessment crews, we got the erosion control crews, we're gonna have the tree cutting crews, and so, you know, we line them up and they get experts in their field. If you go to a private contractor, they gotta figure out all those things, right? They gotta figure out all those different requirements that have to occur. So if I was a private contractor, it's not easy. It's not an easy endeavor. I mean, even if you're incredibly competent, it's not an easy endeavor. I've seen some really good private companies out there, and I think that's part of the problem. I mean, that's part of the problem set here too, that I'm welcome. I have nothing against anybody that opts out.
Yeah.
I have nothing against the private contractors. And on La Costa Beach right now, working with Caltrans, we built out that encroachment zone, but we welcome in private contractors because as far as I'm concerned, more the merrier, it solves the problem.
Yeah.
So I don't honestly, at the end of the day, I have no interest if you opt in or opt out. I just want to get the problem done.
What's the percentage of people that have
15%-ish right now.
that are doing private?
Yeah, about 15%. I mean,
Okay.
I actually thought it was interesting when I looked at the numbers, and I haven't looked at them for about a week, but I thought it might be different in Pacific Palisades, unincorporated Malibu, but it's somewhat a relatively constant 15% out here. And there's a lot of undecided. So we're 3,800 ROEs submitted, 700 opt-outs right now in this fire impact, so that's 4,500. You know, there's about 6,500 damaged parcels to a varying degree. So there's a 2,000 delta there right now of folks that are undecided or haven't submitted. Now that's the real danger is I don't know what's happening with those 2,000. You opt out, I know what you're doing. You opt in, I know we're going to take care of you. If you don't do either, I don't know. And I don't know what's going on with those 2,000, and we got 2 weeks left.
So we have a certain amount of consistency with the core. It's almost like Starbucks. You can get the same coffee in Starbucks in Africa as you can in Malibu. So you guys, there's a certain consistency. Is that
Yes.
safe to say?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
I wanted to ask Yolanda that you're not involved building and safety with debris removal. How does building and safety interact?
I am involved on the opt-outs. And I just want to start thanking the colonel and his team. I have never seen such a dedication and commitment, not only to their mission, right, of the opting in, but to have Malibu clean up. I get emails on Sundays, evenings. His team is at City Hall and in the morning. And so I just want to start by saying that. Just following up with the colonel's comments, 320 front beach properties we lost. And out of those 320, we have 127 that have not decided what they want to do.
After you're done.
About 34 have decided to opt out. And I agree, the enforcement for those that have opted out, they need to follow the same standards and same regulations that the Army Corps is doing. So it becomes difficult, don't take me wrong. It becomes difficult because even our community does not accept to have a pre-construction meeting with those opt-outs. We need to make sure as a city, let them know, those contractors and those opt-outs, that they must follow the environmental regulations, that they cannot leave the site incomplete. So there's a step of quality control that needs to happen.
Or otherwise, they're not going to be able to rebuild. They'll run into you. And say,
Yeah.
that's not safe. It's
Hello.
not good.
Oh, sorry. That brings me to my question. And thank you again for being here. So for the residents that opt out, that becomes a City of Malibu issue. And I know when you opt in, we have a deadline of March 31st. There's the 133 homes on the beach that haven't decided yet. And I'm wondering if there's an incentive or a penalty, because they can for them, because this can go on for years if we don't have a policy, and I don't know if we do, that says you need to make a decision March 31st. I've also heard that we can't get in touch with many of these homeowners because of the nature of where they're located. And I don't know what we're going to do if we can't get in touch with them.
So yeah, let me just answer because you have a few questions in there. As a city, we had meetings right now with the city attorney's office and the city manager to start implementing what is ahead for us. If the March 31st come in and we see the majority of, a percentage of those property owners that have not decided what they want to do. Establishing deadlines as soon as possible is going to be critical for us. The first thing that we're going to be doing this week is sending a reminder to everybody, everyone, not just the beachfront properties. Hey, you have not opted in, or you have tell me you have opted out. So that is going to go through emails. That's going to go through hard copies of notices, and also we will be calling those people. And yes, you are correct. We have a few properties on the beachfront that are owned by LLC, and it's very difficult to get that information or get to those property owners. I'm even getting calls from some of the real estate agents. How can we help? So everybody's willing to help out.
Would that be through the tax assessor's office as far as a contact? Because I'm trying to figure out what I'm worried about is 2 years down the line, people start building and then other people haven't, and then we're going to have a hodgepodge of.
And I can guarantee you that is not going to happen. The first thing, we need to get all of those property removal complete. We are walking one-on-one right now with the Army Corps, and that's why the relationship is close. I want to stay on this pace and make sure that everybody's following the standards and the regulations. But beyond that, for those that they haven't opted out, the city is looking to do, I'm not saying enforcement, but it will come down to enforcements to make sure that everybody gets clean. I mean, at the end of the day, having the hazardous debris out is not good for the population. It's not good for everybody that's here. So we understand.
Thank you.
What would be the stick, the carrot and the stick? So how you say enforcement, what does that look like? What can you do?
Next time that you invite me, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay, all right,
Good
okay,
answer.
fair enough. Wait, Phil, are you?
I'm here. Yes.
Well, hold on, Julie. For the Zoomers, if we don't have a mic on, they won't hear you. Hear your dulcet tones.
I know it's not responsibility of Army Corps of Engineers, but whose responsibility is it to clean up the ocean? Because there's nails and bathtubs and tiles and all kinds of debris in our surf beach, and can they just take a trawler and clean some of that out before it starts recycling out into the estuaries and where the kelp is?
The environmental impact and the devastation that we have, you are correct. It's not just one agency or one person. This morning at 11 o'clock, we're going to have a conversation with the governor's office trying to address that, trying to address the need for Malibu needs help with those environmental issues. So I'm hoping that we can be heard.
Thank you.
I mean, who could handle that? Who could? I mean, like call in the Navy? What are we going to do? Beaches and harbors?
We have a lot of environmental and agencies and nonprofits that we are reaching out.
Heal the Bay?
Heal the Bay. So we will be having those conversations. We want to start with the government and see where this goes. But yes, absolutely. This is going to take years. It's not just a weekend, let's all get together and clean up. No. So it is on the top of my mind.
Here you go.
I've practiced architecture for close to 40 years, and I just want to thank you, and may God bless what's going on right here. My question is really simple as an architect. I need a clear survey before I can, we're assessing whether we have one signed up person who's not in the Malibu jurisdiction. But how do you know when you're done? I mean, like, how do you put a stamp and, you know, you've pulverized all the concrete driveways, you've taken everything except the pools and the retaining walls. How do we know when we can go in and send our surveyor in to do what they have to do?
Well, once we're on the property, most of these properties are taking between 1 and 3 days. Some of the more complex might take 7 to 10 days, but there will be an absolute end state where we're going to communicate to the owner that this is the final walkthrough for that property. I mean, it's a matter of days once we started. Now, there is a closeout piece of that. There's some paperwork that does take a little bit of time, but we ultimately will hand back what's called a final sign-off to the County of Los Angeles. And then that, obviously, the city of Malibu and the owner will have access to that away. It's about an 80-page report. Most of it's pictures. I mean, but it's a lengthy report per property because we take a ton of pictures before, a ton of pictures after. We talk about all the testing that we have done, asbestos, so on and so forth, that it has been done properly, that all the waste streams, and this is what was in the waste streams. We will know down to the very finite amount of how much tonnage came off of the property per waste stream. We have all those numbers in there. And so the actual final sign-off right now, we're probably lagging about a week after we're done on the property. Some of them go a little bit quicker. But it's a matter of really days before you'll have that information back. If that's the question, happy to.
Question?
Hi, yeah, I saw some properties where it was like completely, you know, it looked like nice dirt and there was like a little sign on it. Is that what you guys do?
Yeah, so you'll see, we call it cleared. I know this gets super confusing. When you see the debris gone, which is really a couple days after we've started, that's cleared. Complete is when we get all the way through the paperwork done. But also on the complete side is we have to come back and unfortunately take some trees that have been assessed by an arborist that are hazardous trees that will not survive. We have to take those trees, and then we have to perform an erosion control on the property too. So the property is typically not done. Just the signs out front, those are some precursors. I can get into what those are. The indications visually that that's probably a completed property is when you see the wattles that are all the way around it, and then there's typically it's green, sometimes it's brown. It's an erosion control agent that we put on there, a wood fiber with a binder on it that keeps that erosion in place, or that soil in place rather, on that property. That's an indication visually that that property's complete. The paperwork might be about done or not, so.
So I have another question about, you're looking for asbestos, but there's so many more toxic things that come. I mean, is it still really strongly toxic there? I mean, are they wearing masks and protection?
So you'll see on the property, our workers will have a ventilator mask on. They'll be in a white Tie-X suit. They'll have appropriate headgear and footgear for safety reasons because you're in the fire ash debris and you're disturbing it actively while you're in there. Now, we do utilize what's called the wet method. So you'll see a water trailer at every site. You'll see a hose, and you'll see another employee, a laborer off to the side, and they'll be spraying down. So you try to saturate the site so you're mitigating anything moving into an air particles. But yes, those that work in the site are going to be in attire like that. And then when it is removed, the fire ash debris goes into, you'll see, I'm sure as we're talking, you're going to see them come by. That is it's a Super 10 Tier 4, Tier 5 dump truck by the state of California. It has the highest emission standards and also has the highest safety standards in the country. That's California requirements. It goes into a 10 mil plastic, a real thick plastic sheet, and it gets essentially wrapped inside, and then it gets a secondary, and in most cases, tertiary cover on it before it starts moving. Matter of fact, that's not one of ours, actually. There's a white placard on the side, so that might have been county moving some dirt. I don't know, but that's not one of ours.
So who's responsible for like the final testing of the soil and for the other toxic things?
That's at the discretion of the state and county local officials. So we will not perform a testing on the soil as per FEMA authorities that we have. So we take that's the discussion about, based on experience, we take, the other problem that FEMA has from a federal standpoint is there's no baseline survey. We don't know what was there before the fire. And so, that's part of the rationale. And then based on experience from fires in California and nationwide, the 3-inch penetration is what they've seen in the ash footprint. That's why they take 6, and then it becomes, if California or a local municipality requires more, then at their election they can do so.
We got scraped twice after Woolsey. It was more than that.
Because of what they found?
Yeah, well, part of our problem is we had solar panels, which have their own toxins, as it turns out. We had we had 99 solar panels on the roof of our
And
house.
Rich, let me ask, so Malibu required you to do that, is that correct?
I don't remember.
Linda did.
Yeah, Linda dealt with it, yeah.
And I
don't-
can add to that just briefly. During the USACE fire, the state of California took on the debris removal cleanup. Because this is a regional disaster, we got help with FEMA and Army Corps.
And I want to ask you a question, Yolanda, about moving forward, getting off debris taken care of, all that. The Army's job is done, at least as far as that part goes. What do we do about all these beachfront houses that now, there's going to be some serious challenges in to rebuild those houses with caissons and environmental concerns with the ocean now that standards are different than when those houses were originally built. How do you approach, that's got to be a headache for you.
It's not a headache, but it's a daunting and challenging situation.
Challenge, okay.
I am not going to say it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. The city has started doing more one-on-one, especially for the design professionals. We did a first town hall meeting for requirements. What does the state requires, right? Tomorrow, we're hosting a community meeting for beachfront properties specifically to start addressing all of those challenges.
That's good.
How I see it, constructability, and when we're talking at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about access on PCH. Think of 320 homes that are going to be built and constructability constraints. So we're trying to address all of the majority of those structural items, environmental items, septic systems, foundation systems, for when it rebuilds, it is in a way that everybody follows the minimum code standards.
Understood. Now, I had promised the good colonel I'd have him out by 10.
Okay.
I saw him look at his watch, and I'm sure he's got to go to work.
I pulled a
And you
George
gotta
Bush
go
on
to-
you, I'm sorry.
Anybody
remember that?
Any quick,
I have one quick question. I have opted in, and so how do I get my R right of entry? What's the process, and who do I get that from?
So if you, it's actually a pretty good viewer on recovery.lacounty.gov, and that viewer on there will show if your property, when you zoom in on it, is green, that means it's been handed over to the Corps, which means you're in our runway, we call it, for execution.
And at that time, we get the ROE?
You've already, if you're a green property, you've already submitted your right of entry.
you
The green
give the
just
ROE.
means-
You give the ROE, the right of
Okay,
entry,
right,
giving
of
them the right
course.
of entry.
But I wondered how you do that. You do that online, I guess?
Yes, you can do that online, but this is a great point. I'm glad you brought this up because in City Hall today and through the rest of this week, it's actually the county's contractor that's due, because the ROE process is owned by the county in coordination with the city. And the city's been incredibly gracious and open. And there's 2, maybe 3 employees, but there's at least 2 employees right now that are in Malibu City Hall. So you can do it online. You can go sit down with a human being in front of a computer and get it done. I actually encourage folks to do that because I always get a warm feeling when I look into somebody's eyes and they're like, "You're good."
Yeah.
And so there's those options. You can absolutely do it online. You can go to the City Hall right now. There's employees there to help you. They're there Monday through Friday.
They are on the first floor. As you enter the lobby, on the building and safety counter,
So I'm in the Palisades, so that's okay to go there?
You
You can go
can go there. You can go there too.
You can go
Okay.
there.
Okay. Anybody? Yes, Gary?
Yolanda, I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand you. I'm not saying that you did say this, so I think I have a misunderstanding. Did you infer that there would be no building permits issued or whatever you want to call them until everything is cleaned up between Dukes and Topanga? Or could you have some homes that have not been cleaned up and have a building permit issued for a building next door?
Yeah, so when we're
That's-
talking about debris removal and rebuild of the home,
Yeah.
the building permit cannot be issued when that parcel's not cleaned up.
No,
the
but
parcel needs to be cleaned up.
but the building next door could not be cleaned up.
We can continue issuing permits.
I misunderstood what you were saying.
Thank you for asking.
The other thing I was going to say, Phil, we were talking about trees in your insurance company. There is a difference between a burned up dead tree and is it dead or is it dead? In other words, we have trees, we lost our place in the Woolsey fire. We have trees that are still dying from the Woolsey fire. And it takes a long time. So if an insurance company says, oh, this tree has survived, or if Edison says, oh, this tree has survived, wait a couple years. It generally will not. So you need to find the person to really, an arborist, to find out.
All right, I'm going to let them go. So thank you all. Thanks, good Colonel Yolanda. And if I don't know if any of your crew is going to be able to stay.
Well, the Army brought an army. So, yeah, I mean, everyone in red shirts, the Corps of Engineers is really comprised primarily of civilians, about 38,000 employees, the vast majority of civilians, and those are example of our great civilians in the back, red shirts and Corps symbols on them.
Let's hear for them.
They're going to be sticking around.
All right, so if anybody wants